Alrighty. Hey gang. Welcome back, you guys. Another episode of Stove Chat. Episode 17? I forgot already. I think it's 17. Can you hear me? Can you guys see me? Are you here? I hope you guys are here. Hope you guys are doing good. Hey, Robin L. Great to see you. You're welcome. Thank you for being here. Really appreciate all you guys. Awesome. Glad to see it's working. Catapult Workshop. Right on. Belgian Gulch. Oh man, this is awesome. Felicia, right on. That was quick. I just got your email. Perfect. Great to see you. All right, everybody. Oh, my dog's having a exciting moment out there. David Swanson, right on. Good to see you guys. All right. Happy Wednesday, you guys. How are you? Did you have a good week? Hope you guys had a great one. It's been a good beginning of summer here. Pete, right on. Awesome to see you, man. Cool. Everybody's here. All right. So it looks like the stream is freezing up now. Just when I was thinking it was gonna work well, I've got some stuff I want to try if it streams well. We'll just see how it goes. So hey Dan, Positive Aspect, nice to see you. Always learning. Thank you. Great to see you, man. Hey, I showed that picture of your Holzhausen last week. Always learning. I don't know if you were here or if you caught up with it. But man, I don't know if I responded to you either, but what an awesome wood stack, man. That is so cool. Love it. Thank you for sharing that with us all. The crowd was wowed. So, all right. So Felicia, yeah, if you're new here, if it does, I have really bad internet. And so I bought a cell phone internet modem and solution. I only use it for this stream because I have to buy it, a gig at a time, and it's pretty expensive. But what I'm trying to say is that it only goes so fast, and so if you lose me, you can slide your slider back and just go back in time 30 seconds or so, and that should help with any buffering or whatever. I expect we're going to have some. I'm going to see if we can watch a video. Well, we'll see. We'll see how far we get. But I'd like to show you guys a video today and answer some questions that came in that way as well. So we'll see if we can pull it off. But you guys, please keep me posted on the stream and quality and stuff, because I'm definitely, it's always an issue. So anyways, all right, guys. Great to see you guys. This is so awesome, you guys. Thank you so much for all the support. I've been getting so many emails. You guys have no idea. I'm corresponding with many of you, plus it seems like new ones all the time, regularly, and I'm just loving it. You guys are keeping this stove chat really well fed. It's we're going to, we definitely have a lot to cover, and I keep worrying if we're going to run out of content, and you guys are making sure that we don't. And I'm really stoked because that's exactly why I'm doing this. I want to be here as a resource for you guys, and especially for people like you, Felicia, who contact me with questions, and this is a great way. I can't always, do the long, detailed email, in-depth answers. So Felicia says, where can we see pictures of builds people are sharing? Previous videos. Yeah, Felicia. The previous stove chats, I've been sharing some pictures as I go. I have one video aside from stove chats that's titled customer builds, and it just has some photos of builds. I don't think I did any description of them. They're just images. I don't remember, actually. They might be minor descriptions. But mostly we're sort of interacting here in stove chat. This is kind of a new thing. I guess we've been doing it for 17 weeks now, surprisingly enough. But yeah, previous builds, we're starting to share more and more here, and they're starting to come up in discussion. Unfortunately, I'm not the most organized guy. I don't have a real organized, section of customer builds yet. I'm working towards that, so hopefully I'll get there. And as you can tell, I'm long-winded, so I'll move on from here, and we'll get on to these answers and questions. So, Felicia, while you're here, I think I'll just tackle your question and your issue first, and there's a couple reasons why I wanted to do this live rather than trying to just answer you privately via email. So everyone, Felicia emailed me this morning, I think, with a request that's a really common one that I get often, and so if you don't mind, Felicia, it's just a wonderful example, a great question that I can use, a great situation that I can use as a learning example here for everyone. And I get this question a lot, and there's a lot of depth to it, so I'd like to cover it in detail. So the question is, Felicia is building a tiny home and would like to, her question. I'll read you what she wrote because it was actually perfect. It was exactly what I get this question all the time. So, very, very often. So she's looking to build a healthy tiny home, which is awesome, by the way. I love the way you wrote it. I can totally sense like what you're going for here. So she's obviously I'm sorry to put words in your mouth, but what I'm reading in her email without reading the whole thing is that she's going for a really chemical-free, non-intrusive, non-invasive path, as natural and as least invasive to a human as possible. So a very healthy home. She's basing it on Corbett's experience from My Chemical Free House, and Taryn's from My Chemical Free House. She has some links there regarding mold and things like that. It's really cool. I love what you're doing. So I really like all of your goals, and so I get this question a lot. Is it possible? This is her words, and really smart question. I can really see where you're coming from. Is it possible to incorporate a rocket stove with mass that would meet weight requirements for a tiny home? I don't plan on moving it around much, but it still needs to be able to take at least one trip down the road. I don't know if this is even possible, but I thought I could ask you. So it's a great question, and I get it very, very often. And there's many components to this, and so it's one I really wanted to go over. So the very first one is the issue of weight, and that is a rocket mass heater without weight. Now, a rocket mass heater has only 3 words in it, and the middle one is mass, and mass is weight. And so unfortunately, there's really no way to get around having a thermal storage battery, a thermal storage heater, that doesn't have weight. So in other words, in order to store heat for any amount of time, you need mass. It's going to be heavy. Now, there are things you can do for mobile applications where you can make that mass into formats that you can move around or that you can easily remove and move around. And the best one of those is water. So water is a great mass, right? It weighs a lot. It has a ton of thermal storage, but you can get rid of it. You can offload it and onload it. So you can like have a big tank and it can be heavy, and then you can pump it out and drive to where you need to go, and it can hold up to that. So there are ways to do mass thermal heating, thermal storage in tiny spaces, but they're probably the only real significant way to do it is with water. And you can do that, but and then Felicia in the chat says water sounds good, but it's kind of scary to think about in a tiny home. And this is exactly why I answered your question the way I did. And actually, before we get too far in this whole topic, let me just tell everybody that my answer back to that first email. We wouldn't be having this conversation, but Felicia was, like most people, really interested and adamant. But my first answer back to that email was, here's a great wood stove that I recommend for your situation and for your goals. And it's my friends at Woodstock Soapstone. It's, I think, the best wood stove, box stoves on the market, and they make a beautiful little survival stove that's like 18 inches square, not even that big. I think it's 17 or 16 and a half by 18 and a half, and it's just beautiful, and it's affordable, and you just put it in and your house is heated and it's running at 80% efficiency, better than most rocket stoves. So when people email me and ask me for heater advice, I'm going to give you the advice for probably the best heater. But then Felicia came back with more emails, and now I know she's really interested in a rocket mass heater and is interested in maybe a project or something exciting and interesting, and there's other motivations than just wanting heat. And so it's hard sometimes to suss that out from the first email. So Felicia, I wasn't trying to throw you off. I am still recommending that stove. I do still think that is the best choice for you as a heater. I mean, I'm not going to beat around the bush. You could keep coming at me with all these different things, and I'm still going to say, I picked that for you, and I still do. But I did, that's why I wanted you here, because I want to go over, the rest of your question and why I choose the little heater. So, there are ways to accomplish all of the things you want to accomplish. And I haven't gone into the follow-up emails, but there's more to her goals that she illustrates. So, at first I'm thinking she just wants a heater and she wants it to be safe and chemical free. And I thought Woodstock Soapstone has a great story. They're very much aligned with your values and morals. They make a great product. They're wonderful people. They sell everything out right direct from the factory. Only they'll deal with you, the customer, on the phone. You place your order with them. You can talk to the owner. It's the coolest thing. I love them. They're just a great entity in this world. So I do still think that that's the best choice for people with small spaces who don't have the ability to simply create a mass heater. However, your goals are possible, but everything that we could do to create a rocket mass heater type system to accomplish your goals is going to be so endlessly complex. So that's really, you started it when you said water sounds good, but it gets kind of scary. And that's kind of the path we start to go down, where if you start to choose, these other paths, you're going to end up with more of a project in terms of it's going to be not just a bigger project. I mean, it's going to be more of a project than it is a heater. Like, you're going to spend, an exorbitant amount of time working up the system. It's something you want to do if you want a hobby or a challenge. It's not something you want to tackle if you're trying to build a house and put a life together, in my opinion. Because this is, to get all of your goals. And I'll go into your other email. Let's see if I can bring it up here. Your second email, where you kind of say, is it possible to buy one that's manufactured like the Woodstock, that also has a cooktop or an oven, and maybe some control over the flue designs to bypass the heat to the outside or dispel it inside? Can I do that? And are there other stoves? And am I familiar with the Kimberly? And I am familiar with the Kimberly. Again, without saying anything one way or the other, I believe the Woodstock Soapstone Survival is the stove I would recommend by a long way, by head and shoulders above any of those others. So there's that. So and then finally she finishes it up with says, and the other option could be installing a stove or bench after it's parked and have it built in such a way that could be taken apart. And so yes. So all those answers are yes. You can do all those things. You could build a stove. You could build one just like my tiny stove there. It's just clay and sand mortar. It stacks together in a long weekend. I've often recommended, I've had other tiny home builders come at me with the same enthusiasm and really want one. And that was my answer. I said, you can just build it just like it is. It's not a permanent install. I could take that thing apart in probably 3 hours, and it would take me, another 2 days, 2 8-hour days or so to put it back together the right way. But you can certainly do that. There's nothing permanent in those stoves. So yes, you can build one temporarily. You can build one with water heating and tanks and pumps and plumbing. You can do a lot of those things, but it's going to be much more complicated. And for your, solution in your simple living home, I choose the $1,500 stick the box stove in, and I'm gonna walk away and be done with it. That's just, kind of still what I recommend. But there are ways to do what you want to accomplish. Now, the other thing you asked about was, are there cook stoves that have ovens and bypasses? And there are, and there's some beautiful ones. I don't remember the brand of the one that I saw most recently, but if you simply type in, wood-fired cook stoves, there are a lot of beautiful options. There's some Amish ones that are typically about the same size as a normal range in your home, maybe a little bit wider, but there's some fairly small ones too. And then there's one that comes out of the Northeast that has a little bread oven, I believe on top of the firebox, and it's a really cool little stove. And I apologize, they don't have links, but if you just search Google for wood-fired cook stove, bake oven, you'll find quite a few solutions. The reason that I don't necessarily recommend those is because they tend to be, with the exception of mine, because it has rocket mass heater core, any traditional cook stove, including an Amish one, they're going to be quite a bit less efficient than either a rocket mass heater or a Woodstock soapstone hybrid stove, which uses catalytic burning and secondary air. So you really start trading off efficiency and cleanliness, and I know that's one of your big goals is health. And so I get reluctant to start going too far down that road. There's only a very few box stoves that I'm comfortable with. There's a tiny number that I'm enthusiastic about. I still do feel like rocket mass heaters are a far better solution than most box stoves, but I think there are some box stoves that are just as good or on equal footing, and Woodstock is right there. So yeah, so I've been just rambling. I haven't caught up with any of your guys' chat, so let me catch up. So I'm reading. Let's see. The Navajo project is really cool. What Woodstock did. So Always Learning says, important question: what climate type does she live in? Super cold and dry, moderate and moist effects. Yeah, that's a really, really great input. Always Learning. And Felicia says northern Minnesota, which so again, Felicia, I'm really gonna stress my recommendation. That is a very, very strongly heartfelt recommendation in terms of wanting you, the person who's seeking out my experience. My goal is to make sure that you don't go, man, that guy really steered me wrong. My goal is to try and give you the best experience you can next winter, just because you asked. And I'm going to tell you, if you live somewhere that gets really, really wickedly cold, like where you are, you want a box stove of some sort. You do not want a masonry heater, no offense, unless it's really oversized to your space. But masonry heaters have a much different heat output. They can keep a space warm if it's really well insulated and it's well suited, to the space. Like the masonry mass outsizes the space in a lot of ways. But when you need really high BTU output, like you do when it's 20 below and you're in this tiny shelter that you only have so much room for insulation in anyways, I really recommend box stoves, because they have a much broader range of output. A masonry heater is a narrow, stable, steady range. That's one of its features. It's one of the things we like about it, is that it outputs at a certain range for a long period of time, and we can get really efficient operation. But what you can't do is you can't just crank the heat up and get a bunch more heat out when you need it. So especially given your small space and your limitations for how much size you can put, I'm just going to go with the box stove as my recommendation. And yeah, there's not a rocket stove with a cooktop oven that I know of. I have designs for my riserless core in a metal skin, and I keep wanting to build one. But I haven't seen much need for one, and I think they'd be very expensive to build. And I don't know that it would be a great solution, because you lose the long-term heating capacity. In other words, as soon as that fire's out, the place is cold. That's the nice thing about the little Woodstock soapstone stove, is that it has the ability to burn for like 8 hours on a certain amount of fuel. The rocket stoves just don't do that. Without mass, a rocket stove is only warm for half an hour in any format. My cook stoves as well. That's why I haven't built the metal skinned cook stove, because it's kind of only good for cooking. It will heat the space, but like I said, it will cool off instantly once it goes out. So they're very different in terms of the way they operate, and that's why with small houses it's a tough balance, and why those little box stoves that can kind of rate their burn down and extend the length of time make sense in a space like that. So yeah, and cook stoves in a tiny home would cook her out. And that's what Always Learning says, and I agree. So yeah, can you cook on a rocket stove? Absolutely. This is the thing: is it's really important to separate sort of the passion and the fun part of the rocket stove with kind of your day-to-day life, because you're going to wake up every day and need some heat and need to cook, and it's good to just have it work rather than have it always be a project. Trust me. This is coming from someone who's lived the life of having a project, and I just No, it's all good. You are relentless, but I think you're a lot like me in that sense, and I understand where you're coming from. And so, like I said, if you ask me to recommend a thing to heat your home, to keep you warm, I'm going to give you the best answer. If you want to build some fun stuff, then we can do that too. So, here's what I think, and this actually comes up a lot in other people's questions that aren't tiny homes. People always come up with giant homes, and they're trying to heat them, and they want to build a giant heater. And I say, just simplify it. Build two well-designed heaters that we know work and put them in to opposite sides of the house, and you'll be warm and you'll be happy and you'll be ahead of the game. It sounds like more work, two heaters, but one big heater that doesn't exist, has never been designed and is going to need all kinds of special stuff and is only going to heat from way over there and probably isn't going to get the family room warm anyways. So this is what I'm saying to you too, Felicia, is like, maybe the thing is to separate those functions. Maybe you get a little box stove. It takes care of all your heating needs. And then for fun, you build yourself a tiny cook stove like mine, just kind of on a little covered, space right outside the tiny home once you get it parked. I think that makes a lot more sense than trying to move some of this stuff into your tiny space. So I would say maybe an outdoor cooking space makes a lot of sense to me. Inside, you can do it, but again, if it's a true tiny on a trailer, you're so limited on space. You're just gonna be doing it just to do it. It won't ever be something that really functions that well for you, because you're going to be so limited on space. You can end up with a small little unit with a tiny little firebox, and it's just a pain in the butt with the tiny wood, and the fire doesn't burn that good. And that's my feeling, is that you would never be happy with it. I could be wrong. It's definitely worth exploring. I definitely think you should go down this path. But that's my input on it, is that build this tiny stove, just, right adjacent to your tiny house, right outside. Or you can fit a full-size stove in your design. I mean, conventional. Okay. So maybe you have room. And I wasn't sure if you meant that and the wood stove, if now you were competing for space. But if you could put one of those in your kitchen area, keep in mind they have clearances. As soon as you... Oh, outside. Okay. Yeah. So outside, for sure, you can do all sorts of stuff. So I would encourage you to do that, to look at those two things as separate goals. Once you start playing with the system, it's entirely possible to use your outside system to heat water and run that water through like radiators inside and heat the inside. So... Well, I don't know if we're crossing paths on inside and outside, but I think you know what I'm saying. I'm saying build fun, big, heavy masonry things outside, make an outdoor space, incorporate it into your indoor space. I think you'll make less compromises in your living space, and you'll make less compromises in your stove build, and you'll be happier overall. So I think that's, unless you got something specific to ask, I'm ready to move on to the next topic. So hope that was good and helpful, you guys. Hopefully that helped others as well. Let's move on to Tall Shadow, who has another great question for me. And as always, hey, Rich Points, nice to see you. Glad you're here, man. So Tall Shadow, I want to thank you. Yes, Rich, I did get an email from you, and hopefully we'll get some time here. I'd like to go into it for sure. It was great. So Tall Shadow, what I love about Tall Shadow is he starts the email with normal size font, and then when he gets to like the part where he knows I'm gonna have to read it on the stream here, he blows up the font because he knows I'm old and can't see very well. Hey Felicia, that's a great idea. Maybe I will do that. But thank you for that idea. That's a great idea. Cool. Because that is a question I get all the dang time, and it's so hard to go into all that depth, so thank you. That's a really good idea. And like I said, I really appreciate your question and your willingness to kind of work through it with me. Because it's a tough one. I always just spit out by a wood stove, and I hope people don't get offended. So Tall Shadow, thanks for making the font big for my old eyes, my experienced eyes. And his question So he's talking about the two elements of the door in the how do I even say this? Tall shadow. Okay, Felicia, when you talk about the full size oven potential of building a cook stove. I mean, I have a design. I could show it to you, but yeah, we do need to talk about that. And Always Learning's talking about insulation and said re-insulated your home and cut his wood use in half. That's amazing. Wow. So, Tall Shadow, asking about the door on a batch box and the door flange, and how last week I was talking about how you could open just a single, a single air opening in the main door, and it would feed both the secondary air opening and the primary air opening. And his question is, what distance should these two be apart from each other? Is there an optimal distance the door flange needs to be from the combined air opening for it to self-regulate properly? Tall Shadow, excellent question. Brilliant engineering mind like yours should know that I have no idea. But the answer to that question, here's my feeling. I think that probably matters quite a bit in a big scale, but I'm suspecting that it doesn't matter much in the small scale. So we've got our dimensions for the firebox as laid out by Peter, with my design slightly refined for my purposes, but basically we have planned cores that give you dimensions of depth. There's a little bit of variance, as Peter says, and I agree, in depth as the only factor. So when I build mine, I try and set that door flange to meet that depth designed depth. No idea. And so I try and hit the designed core depth with the flange, and then anything from the flange to the door is going to be just a little bit of extra volume. You need to have enough space there for things to dwell just a bit and to settle. In other words, if they were really close, I think you'd just rush right in, and I don't think it would act quite the same. You wouldn't have a chance for the temperature of the air to really dictate where it goes, right? You need a little bit of stratification room. So, I'm not going to say the bigger the better, but you don't want to pinch it off. Here's the thing, it's kind of naturally regulated in my stoves by the depth of the bricks, right? The core kind of runs to the outer skin, which is a brick, and then you have your 3.5 inches or whatever size bricks you're using, and then your door typically is going to mount either flush to the outside face or just inside of those bricks. So you're typically going to have like a 2.5 inch gap there. So the answer is 2.5 inches is the right distance. And it's far better to make it 2.5 inches than any other distance. I don't know if that's true or not, and we could run the testo and find out, but I suspect that it's probably subtle differences until you get, really extreme one way or the other. So it's a great question. It's worth thinking about. Again, I love to experiment. I'm definitely a guy to tweak with the subtle elements of the design and look for the best choices to meet my goals. There are always compromises, in my opinion. I don't think there's ever any one best choice, but to fit your goals, there usually is at least a path. But I would like to reiterate that someone like Peter, who really chases these details to the nth degree, something like those door distances, he would probably be very interested in what exactly was that finite, that definitive number. I'm okay with are we close enough? Because I know that when we start chasing that nth degree, the returns are diminishing. Just saying, I guess reiterating my casual approach, and the 2.5 inches is probably a good starting point. So, and then David Swanson says, how about door seal rope around 3 sides of the door except for the bottom? Well, I'm not sure what you're asking, David. Are you asking about using that as a inlet? It will act as an inlet. If it was an additional inlet to your primary, here's what I'll say. I'm an advocate of the proper sized air inlet in the proper location and nothing more, because anything else is just going to cause changes. I won't say screw up, but it will change the way the air is coming in the designed inlets. And it is designed very particularly, even though I was just saying I'm pretty casual, the location of those air inlets is important. How that air hits the fuel is important. So no, David, I would not recommend changing the inlet location. Now, that's a very loosely, that's not a real firm-handed recommendation, especially for someone like yourself, who I know you're playing with your designs and you're experimenting. You're gonna say, "Screw you, man! I'm gonna put this thing here and see how it works." And I would encourage you to do that. Just for people who are building a masonry stove, build it once, get it done right, walk away. Keep it straight to the design. But, for sure, David, I do think actually that's an interesting spot. As a matter of fact, my first full masonry cook stove down in my house has an air inlet that is the bottom of the door seal. There's just it was a poorly built door, and I just let that be the air inlet, and that's a fine location. Down low is a better spot than up high. So there you go. So let's move on to Rich. Rich, you still here? Are you still with us, my friend? I'm gonna try to. I would like to try to show everybody Rich's really cool build and see if we can talk about it. And Rich, I'm not sure how far I'm gonna be able to get. I don't think I can show the video and listen to it. Oh, you're here, killer. I'm not sure if I can. Probably not going to show the video and listen to it, but I'm just going to kind of show it as stills, and we can talk about it. And I'll try and hit your questions, but remind me, because you had a lot going on there. So I'll see what we can do. So how's that? How about that? I'm all prepared and everything. So you guys, this is Rich's really, really, really cool, dude. I love it. It's awesome, man. This is such a neat build, and there's a lot of things I like about this. So it's a really cool hybrid of... let me catch up with Robin's question here before we get into your Rich. Excuse me. Robin L., lack of comprehension here is what she says. She says, is the 2.5 inches the distance between the back of the door and the beginning of the secondary air tube? Yes, Robin, it is, but the secondary air tube's beginning is defined by a door flange. There's a metal... I can maybe show you. Oh, well, you can't see it on mine. You can, actually. So, Robin, this is different. Can you guys see me? I don't know if you can. This is different on this stove than it is on the single air inlet stoves. But this door flange, this flange that this is mounted to, the door encapsulates that on the other stoves. And so right behind your door, you'll have that piece of metal door flange. So that's 2.5 inches from the door to the door flange. And your secondary air protrudes and just finishes right in that door flange. So the air comes in through the main door. I think I'm doing this backwards, doesn't matter. Air comes in through the main door, and then it's in this chamber, this 2.5 inch space between the door and the door flange, where it then feeds both that secondary air and the primary air inlet, which is the main firebox inlet. So hopefully that was clear. Once you get a little farther into your plans and start to see the build come together, I think it'll make a little more sense. And if you need me to, I'll be happy to draw something up for you. But again, once the build comes together, those things start to sort of form in your mind, the picture. So don't worry too much if you can't picture it right at the moment. So, Rich, here we are looking at your stove. It's awesome. Love it. Love the hybrid style of the heavy high mass fire brick core and a clean brick exterior. I think that's just I love a brick bench. I mean, ever since I built my first cob bench, and I've helped now with many. I was at Paul's place when Ernie and Erica built the one up in the Wafati, and helped with all that, and just been a big part of a lot of them. And I gotta say, I see a clean brick bench like yours, and it just warms my heart, because I know, you weren't slogging the buckets, and I mean, making the cob is fun, and I've really enjoyed it over the years. But brick sure is a nice path to a clean, easy bench, and I love it. So, Rich's build is really cool in a lot of ways, because he hybridized those things. But what he also did is he hybridized this bench. So this bench is really your standard flue run bench. And Rich even did sort of a standard permaculture move, and he filled it with gravel. And I don't know if I'll be able to get us to a picture of gravel. But very, very interesting. Overall, I don't think I have a good picture. That I'll just skip to something better than this. So it's like a brick. You've got a brick kind of bell bench. You've got these awesome. I got to go to another photo of the whole thing. Sorry, you guys. I think I'll just go back to where I was. So you've got this awesome clean brick bell bench. You've got this, Rich, I love the cast tops. It's just beautiful. So he's got these cast concrete tops on the bench. And then it's flue run through there and gravel. And his question, very first question is, I've got this bench, I've got it full of gravel, and it's just not working that well for me. So what should I fill it with? Should I fill this with cob? And Rich, I'm going to tell you, man, first of all, let's all just recognize that gravel is a terrible material in a rocket mass heater. It was one person's idea a few years ago. They stuck to their guns, and even though everyone who has seen it has always said don't do that, other people still follow along. So not picking on you, Rich, just I want to get that word out there that it's not a good material. It's mostly air. So it's actually more insulative than it is anything else. And I understand why you do it, Rich. I'm not picking on you. Hopefully you don't take it that way. But definitely get that gravel out of there. And here's what I'm going to say, man. I think that it's really, 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 it's really easy to get sucked into the idea that filling that bench up with cob is going to, give you more mass and make it work better. But I actually think you'd be better served by leaving the bench empty. And I actually would love to see you take out half of that flue run. My suggestion to you would be to go from your chimney down to the floor, and then out with flue pipe around the corner of your bench, out to the end of your bench, and then open on the floor. That's the chimney entrance, okay? So the whole bench is a big bell, and the chimney entrance is on the floor way out at the end of your bench, okay? So easy, man. So easy. And it's going to, what's it going to do? It's going to pull, that chimney down there is going to pull those hot gases down your bench. You're going to heat up the bench tops first. Then it's going to start cooling and spilling and spill down the sides. Now, you talked about how your bench can get too hot with the cover. It's an easy thing to fix, right? You just uncover your cover. And that radiates the heat out. I do think that the bell bench with the exhaust down at the end would move gases through your bench more quickly and heat more evenly than the current configuration you have, where you probably have hot spots. I'm just guessing. I don't know for sure. It would also heat up way quicker, so exponentially faster on top, I think. But I don't necessarily believe you would you would exceed your current high heat temperature. So I don't think you'd have to worry about getting them too hot. And then Pete has a great question. Pete says, why not just delete all the pipes? So that's a great question, Pete. And here's the thing: is in my experience, you've seen my designs. They look very much like this. They have benches, and Josh, who was with us last week, built a long bench just like this with a dog leg. And after he built it as a full bell, he contacted me and said, it's just the heating's uneven and I'm having a hard time getting heat all the way down to the end. And so, and I've done this in other builds, but his is a great example. By extending the chimney entrance all the way down there, we just speed up the process of getting the warm. It still acts like a bell. We just moved our chimney entrance down to the far end so that now the gases, they're still going to stratify, but they just they're going to move more quickly down to that dead end bell bench. It's not a dead end anymore. So Robin says, was it make it more difficult to light and create draft? And yes, that's one of the big risks of moving the exhaust. Great question, Robin, man. You're getting to be an expert in no time. One of the risks of moving the exhaust down to that far end is that it is harder to start. No harder, by the way, than a flue run like he's got already, so it isn't going to be any worse than that. But it would be harder than an open bell. But the beauty of Rich's design, I have no problems recommending that, because as you can see, his chimney is right next to his barrel, and he's got a really big T right there in the cleanout, because I know why that's there. It's because flue run benches, flue run stoves, are nasty to start when they're cold. There is nothing that puts more smoke in the room than a big, heavy flue run bench. I've been at an Ernie and Erica workshop. I've seen those stoves try and start up the first time. I've done my own. They are awful to start when they're cold. You have to have either a bypass or a flue priming T in the chimney. And Rich has a flue priming T, and he has the chimney right next to the barrel. I think he'd probably only have to prime the chimney in the beginning of the season when the stove was cold, and then once it was up and warm, you'd probably never have to bypass it again, because the beauty of that bell system is that whole thing can stay warm and just keep feeding that draft for 24 hours after the stove goes out. So this is my recommendation, Rich, is that I would leave that bench open, and then that brings us to, what do we do? Oh, you can't see my mouse. Good. So what do we do here? And this is one of his questions too, is what do I do about this gap around my core? And he's got a hard fire brick core and just an air gap between that and his outer skin. And of course that doesn't work that well, mostly because the bricks are loosely stacked and they're just loose and there's nothing holding them there. And once you start putting wood in there, they're going to be falling apart and stuff like that. And I know you've lived with it, and it's okay, but it's not great. And so, you were saying, what do I do? Do I put insulation around this cob? What's the best thing? So we've got a couple goals here. One goal is to insulate around the core. And the most important goal probably actually is just to isolate everything from moving, to solidify everything, to lock it in place. So here's what I'd recommend, Rich. I'd probably just use cob with perlite for that whole space, including around the bottom of the barrel. Because you're not going to get much heat out of there, and the more heat you can focus in the bottom of the riser, the better. I mean, if you really wanted to nitpick, you could go perlite close to the core, all the way back around the core and the barrel, and then fill out with real cob. But I wouldn't worry about it. I'd probably just fill it all with cob with perlite. And what I'd do is I'd fill right up to your bench top. So, and in that way, you could leave your pipe coming from your manifold into your bench. That would be the leg that gets you into the bench, and then just chop it off, stop it right there into the bench, open into the bench. And then your exhaust leg, like I said, comes from the end of the bench and goes to your chimney. And then all of that, the rest of it's just filled in with cob. And you were like, that's an easy, seals up the front, isolates your core, insulates your core, and seals up your now open bell bench from your closed front end burning system. And you're done, buddy. That's a beautiful working stove we'd probably have that thing done in an hour. And then some whatever you're going to put over the top. If I were you, I would do another one of those beautiful castings around your firebox feed and that top, and that thing would look just gorgeous, man. So there's that. And then he was also asking about going on with the core. He's broken. I love this, by the way, Rich, and it's not because I want to pick on heavy bricks, but he's now noticed that he's been burning this thing. I think he said 3 years, but he keeps having the heavy fire bricks break, especially the ones right in front of the burn tunnel. It's like I always say, whether you're using highly insulated cores or dense heavy fire brick cores, you're gonna have consumables. You're gonna have to do some maintenance. Here's my take on the cracked bricks, Rich. I don't think they need to be fixed. I think you just leave them in there. They crack. They find their happy position. As long as they crack, and crack like puzzle pieces and can't fall out, then I think you can just leave them. Use cob and other loose, sort of soft materials around that. You can always chip it out and get down there and patch it if you need to. But once it's all locked in place and can't move, even if they crack, it won't matter. When to start worrying about it is when the bricks start actually like falling out, falling apart. So there's that. Sorry about the phone. So let me catch up with your chat there. Sorry about the phone again. Tall Shadow says, I know you recommended the Bell Pipe Hybrid to a person on Permies, and they said they liked it very much to even out the heat in the bench. Yeah, so what I'm finding is, my design, the plans that when I sell them, they have a pretty concise bench on them. It's fairly small. I'm trying to send out a system that 100% works, guaranteed. A lot of folks want to extend that bench, and as you guys know, I don't put a limit on ISA because the bypass allows you to have big benches. But at that point, you start needing to tune, then it's time for you to play rocket stove scientist, and you'll have to tune to meet your goals. And that's one of my favorite modifications is if you really extend that bench and you start to have turns in it, and you're going to get, it's going to take a while for slower gases to dwell their way out there in an open bell system. If it's a dead end, it will get warm eventually, but it's not going to get warm real fast. But if you pull the chimney out there, well, now the gases have to motivate out there just as quickly as they're being, as air is being pulled in. So it just speeds that whole process up a lot. So let's see. Pete says evening out the tempo. Single wall pipe or insulated pipe. Single wall. No. Single. We want single wall flue in the bench because we actually want to be giving as much heat away as we can. We want maximum transfer of energy in there. I actually think because I think what happens, Pete, is that I think we cool the gases when they're running along the flat part of the bench, but as soon as they turn the corner and start going up again, you can see how close it is to the barrel. They're going to be picking up heat from the once the fire is really going, he's getting draft acceleration by the flue pipe picking up heat in the vertical section next to the barrel. So I'm not sure. I mean, insulated inside or uninsulated, I guess you could look at it from a few different points of view. In Josh's stove, he did insulate that chimney up in the bell because it was getting too much heat and creating too much draft. So it really just depends on the situation and your goals, and tuning, man. It's going to be personal to everyone. So Felicia says, are you saying put cob around the manifold outlet? Yeah, that is what I'm saying, Felicia. In Rich's stove, I'm saying he could fill this whole chamber here with cob. And he's got like a little manifold. He's got a pipe. I don't know if I can find it, but coming out of the manifold, it's right there. I don't think we'll be able to see it, but yeah, basically he's just going to cob around the bottom of the core and the barrel, and he's just got to get through that cob with a pipe to get into the bench. So he will have a short piece of pipe from the manifold outlet in cob. So, and David Swanson says, try Permatex muffler and tailpipe sealer to hold the broken fire bricks in position. And that's an option. My feeling is that they're going to lock in place like a jigsaw puzzle. And if they don't, like if they're able, if they can fall out, then it's probably just time to replace them. But that's my take on that. So there was is there a way to fix that? Not really, not with heavy fire break. They're just going to do that over time. I think that's just par for the course. So, and that would be with heavy perlite in the cob mix around the core. Yeah, perlite hopefully is lightweight, rich, but I know what you mean. Yeah, heavy mix, heavy levels of perlite. Yeah, I think so. Don't mix it. You know, it doesn't need to be hyper insulated. You do want it to have some body. You know, like definitely you want it to be able to resist you when you're pounding the bricks outwards with firewood. But yeah, I'd just make a cob mix. I wouldn't even use any straw in it. I'd just make a mud mix with some perlite in there to lighten it up a little bit, because you do want insulation around the core as best you can. And I just kind of fill your whole voids there and let it rip, man. Probably don't need to overthink it too much. Really just stabilize your core, isolate the core from moving, insulate the core, and kind of seal off your bench, logging and all that stuff. So that's my take on that. I mean, it is, you know, that there's a lot of ways you could go, but I think that would be the simplest, and it would give you a great starting point. And then, you know, if it didn't work, you're kind of at a great place to start tuning your bench from. Then you can add some cob at one end, or add some flue pipes, or, you know, you can start playing. So that's probably what I'd do. So Rich also asked about cooking on a barrel. He showed me the Rocket Stover's chagrin, I'll call it, which is when your cast iron pan sits on the bumps of your Rocket Mass heater barrel and gets poor heat conductivity. And man, Rich, I feel your pain, brother. I have been there. I had, you know, my barrel in my big house down there for I think about 3 years, and I cooked on it regularly, and I know exactly what you're talking about, from a little bit of a tilt to your eggs running in one corner, but mostly just sort of poor heat distribution because the top's all warbly, and like you said, it can be dong and bong and moving all around. Rocket barrel cooktops aren't really that great to cook on, as it turns out. They're just, the metal's too thin, they bend and warp, and they won't stay flat. Come to find out, that's really the case with steel in general. Even if you were to get half-inch steel, steel is going to move with those kind of heat changes. So here's what I recommend, Rich, is if you can find a cast iron griddle or something like that you can use as a cooktop, you can use that on top of your barrel. Or my favorite is ceramic glass, right, from an old cook stove. And the way you can use those on top of a barrel is you can cut the top of your barrel out, leaving a rim, and on that rim you can place ceramic fiberboard. And then on that ceramic fiberboard you can place your cast iron top or ceramic glass cooktop. You can use a little bit of clay sand mortar to create a seal if need be. Often that ceramic fiber, if you're using like soft wool or ceramic paper they call it, which is sort of softer versions of ceramic fiber, often just the weight of the cooktop is enough to seal them adequately. So the seal shouldn't be an issue. And once you do that, you should have a flat top that transfers heat really well, and you can cook on really well. So that's my recommendation there. It sounds a little risky cutting a hole in your top, but I think once you do it, you'll figure out, oh yeah, I can make a good safe seal here, and you can figure it out. And if you're really fancy, you can use a wet diamond blade, and you can cut the glass, you know, to drop down into that rim, and then you can just use a real little bit of mason's paper, ceramic felt they call it, and just drop that into that circle in your rim. You make it small enough that it doesn't expand and get pinched. That steel is going to shrink and expand. But if you're, you know, a 1/4 inch on all sides, drop that glass circle down in there with the metal top cut out and a rim. Be awesome. So that's my take on the cooktop. I think hopefully that'll give you something you can chew on. And Robin says, how about a glass top on a barbecue oven? Yes, Robin, yes. I have absolutely had that design in mind when I made that barbecue oven. I have a friend who has a single room dwelling for him and his wife and small daughter, and he's looking for a small footprint space. He has radiant floors, and so and as you know, the boiler and the oven are kind of the same footprint. So I was like, dude, let's build you the boiler and we'll put a glass cooktop on top. I think it's a wonderful format for that. The size is just about right for a glass top, and you could definitely cook on it. Now, keep in mind it's quite a bit ways up there, so it's probably going to just be a warming top if it's on your barbecue oven, unless you really wind the oven up to really high temps, which you can do. But yeah, it's not going to cook like the tiny stove cooks, where you can just instantly boil water because you're right above the exiting combustion gases. But it's a great way to go, and there's no reason not to have it there. And if you're tall, even better. And that actually brings me to something Rich shared in his video. He was showing his barrel and his cooking situation, and he had some cinder blocks set up there where he stood on them to get over the top of the barrel and cook. He said, I'm a pretty tall guy, I'm 6'1", but I still, could even be taller because rocket mass heaters, and this isn't, your barbecue oven doesn't need to be this tall, Robin. You can make it as tall as you want. But in the rocket mass heater, they have the riser inside. They have to be a certain height. And so, he was talking about that. And I've always felt like building the space around the rocket mass heater, if you want to cook on your barrel, I would go ahead and build, a brick platform off of your core surround there, Rich, and make that like a permanent part of the house that just looks like it's all part of the heater, and has steps built in, and you kind of step up onto it, and that's your cooking space. I always had that as an image in my mind for an outdoor build that I always wanted to do. I always wanted to do an outdoor kitchen, and I always wanted to have the main seating area sunken, and the rocket stove kind of sunk in. And that way you could come up from the outside and a guy could cook on top of the barrel, and a short guy like me could cook on top of the barrel and be coming at it from the raised elevation. So I've always pictured rocket stoves as being really a beautiful installation in a multi-elevation environment, because they have some height, delta, and sometimes you want to be over the top of it, and sometimes you want to be cuddled down in the bottom of it. And so I think it's important to build your surrounding space to accomplish those goals. So yeah, Rich, if you get some time and you got some spare red brick, you could build that surround out. You can make a beautiful little platform there. So so there you go. So Robin, to answer your question, it would work great. Probably wouldn't be a real hot cooking surface. So okay. Man, we're moving through them, you guys. Let's see. It seems like I had another question. There was Rich, Felicia, and Tall Shadow. No, I guess that's it. Okay, yeah, no, keep the questions coming, Rich. I'm not ready to go. Just trying to get my homework done. So keep them coming. Keep them coming. I think I'm done with the email questions. So Felicia says, if you did what you described, are you saying making the riser container out of masonry, or putting masonry around the barrel to get that cooktop? If you did what you described, are you saying making the riser container? Well, I don't really understand your question. I was just talking about on his barrel, Felicia, on top of his barrel. He was simply putting a cast iron. Let's see if I can show you. He was simply putting a cast iron pan on top of his barrel, and he was lamenting that the metal top of the barrel was not flat. So I was simply saying replace the metal top of the barrel with a ceramic top, and that would do it. No bricks on top of the barrel, Felicia. I think we're crossing, we're getting our signals crossed there. So anyways, I can't find the picture. Yeah, I'm lost. So okay, I'm going to skip that. Just talking about putting a piece of glass right on top of the barrel, Felicia, that's all. No bricks anywhere there. So Catapult, on a Walker boiler that is freestanding outside, would I get a more efficient, hotter burn? Let me switch my cam back here. Would I get a more efficient, hotter burn with a taller chimney? Smokeless is the ultimate goal. Yes, Catapult Workshop. Chimney's going to be important, especially depending on, time of year, conditions, all that stuff. So for sure, the more chimney you can have, the better your draft will be. the Walker boiler is a bit of a bear to start because of that big cold tank in it. And so, you want to make sure that you have your bypass in there as high as you can get it. And if you do that and you get a tall chimney, once you get that tall chimney primed, it will, once you get that tall chimney primed, it will help exponentially. Boiler in particular, because of the finite temperature the boiler, the tank can achieve, they really can't get high chimney temps. So it's hard to get enough draft. The one thing you want to be careful of, Catapult Workshop, is you don't, if it's too long, you can actually cool the gases in the chimney before they leave and get condensation that starts to create a chimney plug. That's only going to be an issue like with startup. So I'm kind of just, I guess what I'm trying, I can summarize. Tall chimney could exacerbate startup issues, but once heated will help performance. How about that? So what you might do, depending on your situation, actually, you know what you can do? What's cool about the boiler, if you have a big inspection door, you can always light a priming fire under the chimney. And when the water, this is only really an issue when you very first fill that tank, because after that, even 2 days after you last burned it, it will have enough residual heat to help the start. But when you first started and you have, cold water in there, it's hard to get the chimney primed. So if you can light a priming fire or incorporate a T in your chimney up high where you can light a priming fire, something like that will help. And I guess that's the best I can tell you about a chimney is harder to start when it's real cold because you can get a chimney plug, but once drafting, better performance. So with that stuff in mind, hopefully you can play with it. Two-piece chimney. Perfect. And like I said, play with it, see what you find. I think you'll probably find that overall performance is better with the taller one, but maybe not. It might not make that much of a difference. And once the thing's heated up and pulling, may not make a difference at all. So Robin L says, like lighting a priming fire in the barbecue oven. Exactly, Robin. Same. They're really the same layout, the boiler and the barbecue oven. The boiler is just the barbecue oven with a water tank inside of it instead of a turkey or whatever. It's a little bit taller, but it's basically the same build. So same location for the priming fire. And Felicia, I'm sorry about that. That I missed your question there. I feel bad. I didn't understand. I must have said something in passing. So Always Learning says, I like the idea of modular cooking baking tops above your hottest surface. Want to bake bread at a lightweight insulated baking dome. Want to fry at a steel surface griddle. Yeah, you know what, Always Learning? That's a really cool thing. I hadn't actually thought about that, but you're talking about having that simple cooktop on top of the barrel with a ceramic fiber seal. It totally would incorporate or would allow quick changeouts. As a matter of fact, you could just cut a small hole in top of the barrel, like a small one, 3 inches or so. And you could put a ceramic fiber seal around that, and you could just set your pan there. Now, you actually can't do that. It's a terrible idea because as soon as you lift your pan off, you're venting into your space. So don't do that inside. But you could do a really small, like a single burner cooktop there, and you could just put, a little thing there and then put your pan on there. So that's a really cool idea, Always Learning. It's a really good one. I love it. All right. So, Rich, did you have one more question? Did I miss it? Oh, what do I think about your cinder blocks on the bottom? I see it there. So, man, I love it. I don't know if you saw that I did the same thing in my full masonry cook stove, and I did it for the same reason. Yours was to insulate your stove from the floor. Mine was to insulate my floor from the stove because I was building on a wood floor, but I think that is an awesome way to go, and I always encourage people to build their rocket mass heaters with airspace underneath so they can monitor what's going on underneath. It does create a little bit of a challenge with elevations because, you know, it raises you up a little bit, but I think it is well worth doing so you know what's happening under there. Now, in your case, I think you're on a concrete floor, and you did it because you live in a cold place and you want to isolate that from the slab, and I think that's a really wise move. I see nothing but positives from that. You know, you use your cinder blocks, your concrete blocks, the same way I did, which is we've kind of placed them against their natural strength. You know, they're supposed to go 90 degrees to that to be strong, but I don't think we're putting much stress on them. You know, we're spreading this load of more masonry out across them. There's no point loading, so I think they're just fine. I think you did great. I would recommend other people do the same. Anyone looking to build a rocket mass heater bench on a surface that they want to insulate it from, I think this is a great way to go. It's not highly insulated, but it's insulated enough. Those things don't transfer heat very well. They're full of air. And there's a big airspace there. You can stick a thermometer on a stick under there and get it all the way back to the middle of the bench, and you could always know what was going on if you had a wooden floor under there. You know, I think it's a really good idea. So Robin asks, how about a cast iron top to direct cook and add insulated cover over cast iron with your baking food inside? Totally, Robin. That is an awesome way to go. And actually, some of the old Aga ranges from the UK have a really nice big insulated lid that kind of covers the whole cooktop. And I have a customer in the UK who has incorporated one of those into a tiny stove, and it's beautiful. They have a cast iron cooktop with this big insulated cover that has a porcelain, you know, or enameled cast iron, like a Le Creuset cookware or something top, and it's gorgeous, and it's really functional. And I always am envious whenever I'm cooking my over easy eggs, because I'm always putting a little pan lid over them and wishing I think it's great. Super cool way to go. So Always Learning is talking about his, the modular cooktops, no holes, all on top. Yeah, man. Cool stuff. So, okay, guys, so we've been going for an hour. Probably just about enough. If you guys have more questions, I'm happy to answer them. I'm not running away, but we can start heading towards wrapping it up here. Hopefully that... Yeah, Always Learning says use a ceramic Romertoff lid. I had a beautiful ceramic Romertoff, cooking thing that I use in my in the oven chambers all the time, and yeah, that would be a good choice for the top. Those are so cool. So yeah, Rich, I'm glad that was helpful. I hope that got you thinking anyways, and gives you some stuff to work on and maybe head towards. Felicia, I hope that your questions were answered. I apologize that I missed your one question. We could revisit it if you like, but hopefully that got you guys covered. Carpenter family, you're welcome. Thanks for being here every time. Really appreciate you. What else? I guess that's probably enough for today, huh? Let me check the email real quick and see if anything else came in. It seemed like someone sent something in, but... Nope. Okay. So, yeah, it was really good, you guys. Thanks for being here, everybody. I guess that's it, huh? Let's wind it down. Let's do it again next week. I'm really enjoying it, you guys. I can't tell you how much I appreciate all your support, and it's just been really awesome. So, okay. Thanks, you guys. Send me more emails, send me more questions, send me more pictures, and we'll go over some more of your builds next week. So, thanks, you guys. Great to see you. Have a great week, everybody. What do? I hit my video. Okay. Bye, guys.